What is up, everybody? Today, we are going to be reviewing Assassin's Creed Origins for the PlayStation 4. I'm SpraynPray1000. In general, just to start, I've played a lot of Assassin's Creed games. I think that out of all the series on my channel, the ones I've played the most would probably have to be like Zelda, Metroid, and Assassin's Creed. And definitely, Assassin's Creed is a franchise I really like. I think there's a lot of potential with it that sometimes Ubisoft reaches and sometimes they don't. But ultimately, what do I think about Assassin's Creed Origins? Well, to start off, the premise of Assassin's Creed Origins is, as the name suggests, to explain the origins of the Assassin's Order, which from other games we sort of glean it. The earliest game in the timeline that we had up until now was Assassin's Creed 1, from which point everything sort of moved forward into the future. But here we go far back into the past to literally experience the origins of the Assassins, starring a man by the name of Bayek of Siwa. And Bayek of Siwa is a typical Medjay living in Egypt during the time when the Ptolemies were ruling. And there's a lot of interesting stuff. We have the Greeks sort of getting involved in various things in towns. Rome is getting involved. And most importantly, we have Egypt and the Egyptian areas. The story follows Bayek as he journeys along a quest of vengeance to find the men who have wronged him and killed his son. And the story progresses from there. And one of the first things I really want to elaborate and point out is that while Assassin's games usually have a nice focus on the main character, one of the nicest things about Assassin's Creed Origins is that you really get to feel for Bayek. I think that the way they have posed his character and really presented him is what one of the strongest points of his character is. Bayek himself is a very interesting person. He definitely is a man of the people. He's a really nice and decent guy, but he definitely has strong convictions and is a really pronounced in what he believes in. He really understands his duty as a Medjay, and he takes it very seriously. And while, you know, most characters in most games are supposed to be, you know, for the greater good and above and beyond, I can't help but see that Bayek is not really too much of a cookie cutter like that. I really feel like a lot of times I was interested in actually doing the side quests, which, to play off this, the side quests are actually very involved in Bayek's past, and I was very interested to see how stuff forms up. So basically, it's your typical sort of Assassin's Creed type of deal, where there's a list of people who are bad people that you need to kill, but the way that the story poses it is a little bit more different. Rather than just seeing them on a chart and then you just go out and kill them, you actually sort of do a more Assassin's Creed 1 type of a deal where you learn about what they're doing, you learn about how to strike, and while it's not as defined as one of the only good things about Unity, which was doing this type of stuff, it is definitely more interesting to see how the world reacts to these people, you know, and there's a lot of hits and twists in various locations. There's a lot of differing things with the characters. It's not so much just, oh, you're at the assassination mission, here, just kill the person. And here, maybe there's a cool way to kill them or something. We actually get to see the effects that they have on Egypt and all the various people. There's a lot of side quests involving doing stuff for the people that take place after the assassinations, or sometimes around the same time. And while the side quests are you know, just a little bit over your typical go here, do this, at least the way they're framed within the story and the context, it's rewarding to want to do them. It's actually something I drove out and wanted to do in a lot of cases because I just felt it was so fulfilling. Ultimately, the story, I think, is one of my favorites out of the Assassin's Creed games, and it really just has me wondering, well, I mean, they make something this nice, but then when it comes to a game like Syndicate or Unity, they have absolutely no clue what they're doing. I really cannot, for the life of me, comprehend it. The gameplay of Assassin's Creed Origins is vastly different from other Assassin's Creed games, whereas most Assassin's Creed games are generally very animation locked, meaning that everyone performs a set animation at a certain time. Assassin's Creed Origins has a much more lively, in-depth combat system. Rather than just press X, your character attacks, if it connects, you kill an enemy, and other things. Enemies in this game have health bars And Bayek himself is not an invincible tank like some of the other assassins have been. In fact, Bayek, like, the whole point of this combat system is to be more skill-based rather than hitting the right move at the right time, and the enemies are just stuck in an animation to die or to counter or anything. It's more like For Honor, which is a game that they recently released, where you sort of lock on, the camera doesn't take this eye-in-the-sky sort of a deal, and stays focused behind Bayek. The closest thing I could say is that it's almost kind of gone back to sort of Zelda-style combat as well. And you can fight hordes of enemies like this. You don't necessarily have to use lock-on if you don't want to. And it's really interesting and different. One of the things I will say that might be a little bit of a negative is that there's not really much complexity with tools usage anymore. The tools in this game, for the most part, are not really as helpful, I found. Fire bombs are okay. They're mainly there if you want to start a fire, which you could do with other methods anyway. Basically, the only one that I really used was sleep darts for stealth. And to go hand in hand with that, the stealth of this game has sort of been upped. There's various things they've added. For starters, everyone in this game has a level, as opposed to previous Assassin's Creed games where, while there was sort of a level system, it was generally not that, like, RPG-esque. I would say that Origins is pretty much the first actual RPG of the series. Everyone has a definitive level, and part of the game is leveling up Bayek and leveling up his equipment and leveling up his gear in such a way that you are able to take on these enemies and to fight them. And your hidden blade, which used to be an instant kill in Assassin's Creed, is not necessarily an instant kill anymore. What the hidden blade does instead is it will deal a large amount of damage, which is usually more than enough to kill enemies at your level. And actually, in one of the negative things I don't like about it, there are a couple of enemies that are usually targets that if you try to use the hidden blade to kill them during stealth, it won't kill them. Which will then force you to get into combat. I actually don't like that one bit, just because, like, if you're level 40, and there's a level 42 gigantic Colossus enemy, and I mean like a big giant dude, like, you won't be able to one-shot him using the hidden blade, which kind of sucks, because if you try not to break stealth, then you're unfortunately going to be drawn into combat with him. But I never really had too much of a problem with that specifically. So that's just one thing. I think that at a certain level cap, especially since 40 is the level cap, it should just revert to the traditional instant kill, unless it's a story boss, which none of them were. And that's one of the nice things I like about this game, because at higher levels you can very easily go into lower level areas and clear them out. You don't have to spend a lot of time fighting generic enemies. You can more or less one-shot them. There's gear rarity. There's 3 different gear levels. There is normal, which is blue. There is rare, which is purple. And then there is legendary, which is gold. And obviously, the higher the rarity, the better it is among things in that level. You know, everything is relative. So later on, you might find something that is a blue, but it's way higher level than that yellow you found at the beginning of the game, so it's better. And one of the nice things that this game does is, if you have a lot of money, you can actually upgrade your older weapons to be higher level. So if there's a weapon you really like, you know, and there's certain rare weapons in the game, you can upgrade it later on and it will become a higher level weapon, and then you can keep using it if you so choose to, if it fits your build or anything along those lines. And that's cool. There's a very big and in-depth flow chart, a skill chart, which you can use to upgrade Bayek's various abilities, giving him access to new tools, giving him access to bigger weapons, bigger things to ride in, more upgrades for stealth, allowing you to sneak up behind people, chain assassinations, and a couple of things. And I really like that, because the gameplay of this game has really been evolved beyond what I would expect from Assassin's Creed. Now, one of the things that I think is a negative about this game is that a lot of times some things just kind of don't work. Not in any real consistent manner, but like occasionally you'll do a double assassinate, and you know, you could push the button, you could push the shit out of it, and it won't do it, and the guy will just stand looking at you, and you'll enter combat. Sometimes it throws 2 sleep darts instead of 1. Little quirks like that. Nothing that's gonna get you completely eviscerated, but at the same time, stuff that is kind of annoying. But what I do like about a lot of the stuff is that because this game sort of takes a hint from Breath of the Wild and lets you climb almost anything in the game, you're able to scale most surfaces. You're able to really infiltrate most ways you want to. I think that that's definitely a strength of the game. Now, there is no eagle vision in this game in the traditional sense, but there is the ability to control Bayek's eagle and to be able to look all around the overworld or wherever you want to go to spot things like enemies, hidden entryways, objectives, and whatnot. And that is a strength about this game. I do think that that sort of recon mode is actually pretty helpful because it will allow you to better plan out what you want to do. It allows you to spot enemies and see things. That being said, this game does have a pulse ability that is meant for items. I do think that at least in some degree it would have been interesting to put that in as sort of like a traditional eagle vision, especially in cases where you're not able to use your eagle. Just to be able to have a close range method of finding enemies. Again, something very small and not necessarily that game breaking. And yeah, I think that another thing that this game does pretty well is that there's a nice distribution of weapons and stuff, so you're never wanting for much, I feel. At the same time, the game is complex. Obviously, you want to pick your fights. You don't want to just kind of run in and do the Ezio thing where enemies attack you one by one and stuff like that, and you can just freely kind of counter them or just see whatever. One of the things I wish this game did do was if it lets you train your own assassins. I really wish that, I feel that with this setting and this story and this everything, that would have been a pretty cool thing to throw in. The ability to train assassins to be able to fight alongside you. Not that Bayek particularly needs an army to kill most things that come at him, but it would have been pretty cool. There's a variety of things to do in the overworld, which is what I like, between exploring tombs, taking out outposts of either Roman, Greek, or bandit soldiers, finding circles for stargazing, for backstory, clearing out animal hideouts to just for either pelts or experience or whatever, riding around on the overworld and seeing mirages in the desert, killing war elephants, sailing around the Mediterranean and stuff like that. There's a variety of things to do in this game that's not just necessarily the story. In fact, a good chunk of my playthrough was almost basically me ignoring the story at a point. I was busy traveling all over the open world, doing all these different things night after night because I was so engrossed in doing the variety of things each area presented. And while it did get quicker and faster towards the end of the game, it was still fun to do. Now, one of the big sort of things I do not like about this game is that there is a secondary character in this game that you do play as, and I'm not going to say who it is, but one of the nice things I wish they had done in this game is if they had actually given them like a mini sort of campaign. Because basically what happens is at certain points in later missions you take control of this character, and it would have been nice and interesting if you actually were able to like fight and level them up in a sort of mini campaign. And they do bring back some of the naval missions, which is pretty cool. I think that their campaign probably could have focused more about that, which would have been interesting. Additionally, one of the things that I kind of wish this game did was, like I said, with the assassins and training them up. Yeah, but additionally, one of the things that I wish this game did do was there's a lot of areas in this game that are just basically empty. There's nothing to do out there. There are no enemies. There's literally nothing in that area. Now there's like, I want to say 3 or 4 of these areas. It's very clear which areas are high traffic and have a lot to do and which areas are not. And while, of course, there is a lot of stuff to do in this game, there is no shortage of stuff to do between races and gladiator events, killing tough enemies. It's just kind of weird that there's like 3 or 4 areas with virtually nothing to do in them. They're just sort of there to experiment and to explore with. And now, while they may add DLC later on, or expand upon it, because they are adding 2 packs of DLC to this game, they are going to add in a discovery mode, which is basically an educational mode, which is pretty interesting. I don't know many games that do that. It is kind of weird that for the main base campaign of this game, there are a couple of areas that essentially have no bearing on the plot. There's no reason to go out there. It's just sort of endless desert. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, we see the return of towns and stuff. We see the return of a variety of things. One of the things I do wish this game did bring back was the mini-map. I'm not particularly sure why they got rid of it. It would be nice to see restricted areas, like what the exact border of them are. It would be better to see where enemies are, as opposed to this thing that they do where they put like a white like tent. I want to say like in stealth games where they'll put like stuff that borders the screen. They'll put that on this game to like signify that someone is to your left or whatever direction the thing is on the border of your screen. I really wish that they just brought back a mini-map in addition to that at the bare minimum, because it would make things a little bit easier when it comes to being infiltrating an enemy fort and being knee-deep in it, and you're potentially surrounded by enemies, or just in general to see what the border of the restricted area is. Which ironically is one of the few things that Unity did really well. Additionally, we also have stuff from Unity and whatnot, like murder mysteries, although they return in a limited capacity. The real-world story is much more toned down, but at the same time, at least on some level, fundamentally interesting and involving. We once again take control of an actual person as opposed to just a disembodied existence that people associate with, which is a step up from the last couple of games. While I wasn't necessarily enthralled by the person that they put me as, I was at least interested to see what their story was, beyond all the silly jokes and how the story ultimately ended up. And finally, the conclusion of the whole ordeal was actually really interesting and really fun. So graphically and obviously I should just say presentationally, the game is nice. It's fun to play as. I didn't really have many problems with the game, just getting it to run on the PS4. It was enjoyable. It was definitely a fun play. Obviously, I would recommend. This is possibly one of my favorite games on the PS4, just because of all the stuff to do and how nice and well done it is. And it really shows that when they try, they can actually really make something nice. Which brings me to my even bigger point of why was it not always like this? And if they need the 2-year cycle, then the 2-year cycle is something that they should absolutely do. Origins is a thoroughly fun game from start to finish, and I absolutely enjoy it the whole way through. I thoroughly like the game from A to B, and it definitely gave me a lot of A to B to do, because I more or less cleared the open world besides a couple of side quests. The main story is satisfying and interesting. The side quests are satisfying and interesting, especially the ones detailing with Bayek's past and all the people he's known, and sort of piecing it together to form the big story of what happened to him during some of the time skips. And I'm interested to see what the DLC is. And I don't know if I've never done a verdict for a DLC before, but I might actually be interested in doing that, because I think that the DLC is going to be interesting. At least the one that's definitely canon. There's another one that's coming out, more about mummies and stuff. But I'm definitely interested in playing the DLC. So what would I give Assassin's Creed Origins for the PS4? Well, let's see. Good game. The only thing I can really say is that some areas are empty. There's a little bit of general weirdness with some of the controls. And the extra character you play as in the main story, I wish they had a mini campaign and they had more naval missions. That's about it. For what the game does, it doesn't do anything really poorly. And so because of that, I can't really think of like an actual horrible negative thing to say. It runs well, it's a decent game, it's fun. But yeah, ultimately, what would I give Assassin's Creed Origins? I would probably have to say that I like it better than Black Flag. I think that Assassin's Creed Origins might be possibly the best game in the franchise thus far. Probably tied or very close to Brotherhood and 4. I'm going to give it 1 point more than I gave Brotherhood, which would place it at a 95 out of 100. Not Brotherhood, excuse me, Black Flag, I gave a 94 way back in like 2014 when I played it, or when I at least got around to the verdict for it. I sort of felt the same sort of open world endearment that I remember from Black Flag, which had a lot of open world and at its time was just a complete like long shot for how good it was. I absolutely did not expect that after Assassin's Creed 3. And in the same way, I did not expect Origins to be as good as Assassin's Creed Unity and Assassin's Creed Syndicate, as you know, especially since it came after. Because those games were just, I don't even know. I don't know what the fuck happened. But yeah, Origins definitely improves upon most of the things that Assassin's Creed has ever tried to do. And that, in and of itself, in my opinion, is good enough to get it a pretty decently high ranking from me. So that's about it. There's not really much else to say. I definitely recommend it. Out of a lot of the games that came out in 2017, it's probably one of the top PS4 games I would recommend, just based on how good it is. So that's basically it. I'm SpraynPray1000. I'll see you guys next time. This was a really fun game to play through, and it was really enjoyable, and I liked it from start to finish for story and gameplay. So that's about it.